And welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where two compulsive nut jobs are going to mainline history stories and memes and compulsively research the history behind them and then verbally info dump in a gratuitous nature upon the other one the stories they've only recently learned. I am host one. I am Theresa. And that.
Is Angie. I am host two.
And welcome. This is episode 123.
That's wild. We've made it to 1, 2, 3.
123.
That's bananas.
1, 2, 3, 4 is a big milestone that I feel like most don't get to.
That's a lot of more numbers.
It is a lot more numbers. Yeah. hmm
Oh, okay. I like where we're headed. I like
Yep.
where we're headed.
Yeah, I do what I can.
You know, barely contained chaos that you are.
Honestly, I feel like that is how I just try to get through my life as a whole. I am three type A raccoons in a trench coat.
I love that for you, honestly. That's trying to get into a movie, by the way. Three Type A raccoons in a trench coat trying to get into a movie.
And upset at how everybody ahead of me is doing it wrong.
Clearly. And not taking
Honestly.
it and not doing it quick enough. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. I told one of the boys on the way out this morning that I was not petty enough today to deal with other people's traffic violations.
Hmm.
So yeah, I know I feel where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I think I'll just let them drive. I can't this day. It's
Yeah. You know what? Honestly, just how about it just don't?
it seems like the best bet for me today.
I mean, Hubs and I were somewhere yesterday, and I let the inside voice become my outside voice. To
Oh, I
which
love it when that happens.
Hubs looked at me and just said, "This is why you're an indoor cat."
Facts.
And I'm like, "Look, here's why you should be the one who goes and does all the chores outside, the errands.
The outside the house things. That's
Yeah,
yeah, you do that thing.
you need a tersely
Hmm.
worded email. I am here.
I'm your guy. Let's
Yeah.
do that. Yeah.
You need me to document everything. I am here. Do you need a spreadsheet for that? This is what I've got."
Yes, I spreadsheeted your socks. It's fine.
Yeah.
Those are
And
your
I've
Tuesday socks. Why
prioritized
are you
them
wearing them?
by the time they wear out if you follow this schedule. This way they all get, you don't wear
Yeah.
through one pair super quick. Anyhow,
Yeah.
um,
We got you. I understand.
I have a story for you that is mostly sources, mostly sources.
Like the story is sources.
I mean, I hear you. It just, yeah, like there's a lot that I've got and
I
I'd
love
love to
this.
share. Um,
I would love to listen.
okay. So let me start with said sources. Stanford University Library, Wong Kim Ark, uh, American Immigration Council, Birthright Citizenship in the United States, National Archives, Departure Statement of Wong Kim Ark, 1984. Nope, 1894. Museum of Chinese in America, Wong Kim Ark
She
Day.
just likes to make up numbers in case you guys were curious.
I cannot read a number out loud. I just can't stop, won't stop.
Live your truth.
Um, National Examiner honoring, remembering, and sharing the life of Kim Ark and his fight for justice by Valerie Oka Peng. History.com had a fabulous article. The Chinese Immigrant Son Who Fought for Birthright Citizenship by Christopher Klein. El Paso Matters. He won a landmark birthright citizenship case at the Supreme Court. El Paso tried to deport him anyway by Roger Moore. The San Francisco Standard, after Trump blocks birthright citizenship, Bay Area's family history is back in the spotlight by Han Lee. Okay, so all of that titles gave everything away. I hope you weren't paying attention. And if you were, I have a feeling this is going to be pretty outlandish regardless.
I feel like even though I was paying attention, There were so many titles. I'm not sure where to start.
I know. I tried to, I was like, do I let her keep her headphones on? I was like, no, I'm just going to waterboard her with information and then I'm going to start my story.
Great. I live for
Yeah.
a solid waterboarding.
I had follow-ups. I don't know where to go. You know, it's like there were
She
so
literally
many.
counted.
It was just like, which one do I go with? Because I had options and I chose nothing.
My God, are you feeling well?
I need more caffeine. But here we go.
Mm.
The Depression of 1873. I kind of talked a little bit about this when we went through last week's episode where I talked about the Chinese who built up Portland and the Lone Fir Cemetery. But there was this depression that hit in 1873. There's widespread unemployment, there's wage cuts, labor strikes. It's a
All the
rip
things.
roaring bad time.
Yeah.
Now, Chinese laborers, among others, are the scapegoats for all the difficulties that the working Caucasians are facing because we have to kick somebody
Caucasians.
while we're down.
Yeah.
So there's this wave of anti-Chinese sentiment that kicks in. Sentiment, not sediment, not dirts.
You know what? To me, that made total sense. I was like, yep, that's
Honestly,
not the right word.
yep. Um, there's a slogan that's widespread in California, the Chinese must go. So unique.
Hmm.
Could
This
have been workshopped.
sounds like history rhymes
Yep.
yet again.
So there's a lot of pressure because the public is deep in their feelings. And so Congress passes, and then President Chester A. Arthur signs into law the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. And this bars Chinese workers from entering the U.S. and denying citizenship to Chinese immigrants that are already in the country.
I have never, in all of my years, can I think of a single time in my life I have heard that president's name.
Look, he did like one thing, right? And this
And
wasn't
this
just,
was it.
this was it.
Okay, got it. She's a president for like 12 minutes.
I mean, maybe Arthur did more, but I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I guess I'm gonna have to do some Googling later because it's the first time I've ever heard of him. That I
True.
know of. That I
Right. I
know. I'm
mean,
sure I've read
you
his
might go
name, but
through and go, "Oh my gosh, it was him with the dreamy eyes." I have no idea. I can't even
the
recall what he looks
dreamy
like.
eyes.
But
Yeah, okay.
Wong Kim Ark, Wong being the family name, is born October 1st, 1870. He's born in an apartment above his father's grocery store at 751 Sacramento Street in San Francisco's Chinatown.
Love that we have an address.
I was so thrilled, so I had to include it. There's restrictive laws and customs. We talked about this last time about how there was a limited immigration of Chinese women because you had to prove that you were not disreputable.
Right, right, right. You were a maiden, if you will.
Yeah, that you weren't coming here to sex work it up. Um,
Which is
so,
weird because I feel like that's what they specifically human trafficked some Asian women here for.
you know, unclear, and I have a feeling it's who, what, and what, money greased the palms of somebody else.
Yeah,
Either way, there's not a ton of Chinese people born in the country because of these prohibitions. And so there's not a ton of kids, right? So, 1877, Wong's parents, they are struggling with what is called the Long Depression, and they decide to return to China. Now, I've got some conflicting sources. Some say they brought baby Ark with them. Others say that his parents left and then he stayed with relatives.
okay.
Okay. Either way, they decide to go. Now, at some point, I think it's around 1890, he decides to go visit his family in China. Sources are kind of
Murky.
ambiguous, or conflicting. That's what I've got to go with. Um, when he did go, so okay, the source that says that he went with his family, it said that there was an economic need that prompted him to later return to the US, and he worked as a dishwasher and a cook. And they have sources to validate that. So the middle bit's a bit fuzzy.
Okay.
1890, he travels back to his parents' home village, and this time he marries and fathers a kid
In
before
China,
coming in
in his
China.
village. Okay.
Yep. And then decides to come back to work in the US to support his new family.
Okay.
So this already sounds like a very tough situation to leave new family.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1894, he traveled to China for a temporary visit. So we've already had some back and forth, right? Like he's come and gone a couple of times. He's bringing with him documentation that he thought he would need to be allowed to return to California.
Okay.
So if you're trying to travel into California, I'm sure you've got a list of documentation off the top of your head that you're going to need if you're coming from a different country.
Yeah.
I bet it doesn't include an affidavit signed by US citizens, white dudes, that's attesting that he is, quote, known to us.
Yeah,
And
no, can't say I have that.
he was indeed born in the US, specifically in the city and county of San Francisco, state of California.
Yeah, no. No, I don't have to carry that that I know of, at
Right.
least not right now anyway.
So he sails back to San Francisco on a ship called the Coptic in 1895. And once he gets to the port, he is detained and denied entry by John Weiss, who is a customs collector and known opponent of Chinese immigration.
Oh, that's a good spot for him.
Yeah. Now, fortunately for Wong, the Chinese immigrants in San Francisco had this aid organization, the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association, which is also known as the Six Companies.
I did
Now,
not see that going that way.
excitingly, I brought up the CCBA when we talked about the Lone Fir Cemetery
Okay, yeah.
and how they helped. They helped with legal things. They helped pull money together to, to bury dead.
Right.
They did everything together, right? So the six companies, and there was like some knowledge as to why they're called the six companies. Did I retain it? No. Did I put it in my notes? Also, no.
These are things.
These are things, but Wong is being held captive on a ship in San Francisco Bay. Now, attorneys for the six companies filed a writ of habeas corpus arguing that Wong is being restrained in violation of his rights as a U.S. citizen.
Okay.
Now, with the support of the CCBA, Wong decided to fight his deportation and he mounted a case that went right up to the Supreme Court.
That's awesome.
Did I mention that this is 1894? Now, 1895. So early on, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is all heating up, and Wong is spending months on ships as he's moved from ship to ship anchored in San Francisco Bay.
Of course, because we can't just walk into San Francisco and get a room because we've been right. Okay.
But rather than accepting Weiss's decision, he's taking on the US government. He's got this writ of habeas corpus. It's being challenged by US attorneys, and the US attorneys write Wong Kim Ark has been at all times, by reason of his race, language, color, and dress, a Chinese person. That's their argument.
But I was born here in the US.
Ah, see, this is where we're going to get to some fun things because there's two kinds of citizenship. There is citizenship by blood. You inherit the citizenship of your parents.
Right.
And then there is citizenship of soil. And they have the Latin versions in the law. So if you are
Okay.
born, then you are a citizen of that soil, but you can also inherit the citizenship of your parents. And so they're arguing you inherit that of your parents. You are Chinese. They are subject to the emperor, so kick rocks.
Right. Okay.
So the U.S. Solicitor General Holmes Conrad, he disagrees. He's like, we're taking this all the way to the top. This goes all the way to the top because I am not letting this happen. He's arguing that Wong is barred entry under the Chinese Exclusion Act, and he also maintains that he's not a U.S. citizen because his parents are Chinese persons subject to the emperor of China, and so by extension, son is also a Chinese person who is also
Right.
subject to the will of the emperor.
Right. This makes sense.
Now, this is hinging on the 14th Amendment, which is still pretty fresh. It was ratified in 1868. And
Okay.
this guaranteed citizenship and equal civil rights to emancipated slaves, African Americans, in the wake of the Civil War. Now, the opening line of the amendment is all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States.
Which is our guy because he was literally born right here in San Francisco.
Okay, and that was also interpreted as lower by the lower courts as granting citizenship to children of citizens of foreign country on American soil.
Okay.
We get U.S. District Judge William Marrow sided with Wong, declaring him an American citizen and ordering his release. His opponents within the law, they saw legal proceedings that they could use him as a test case and push that case all the way up so that they can actually get law ratified.
Of course.
Now, March of 1897, so this has now been years in the making, the Supreme Court hears the oral arguments for the case of the United States versus Wong Kim Ark. And they debated whether American citizenship would be based on the principle of jus sanguinis, or right of blood, or jus soli, the right of the soil.
Right. Okay. So we still got some kinks to work out.
Yeah, like it's too new to have this figured out yet.
Okay.
So, just like I stated earlier, the government's case is like his parents are subject to the will of the emperor. Their loyalty sides that way. Ergo, he cannot. Just like at that point, Native Americans were subject to their tribe, so they cannot be
Right.
citizens of the US because they follow a completely different level of government.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, look, it's one of those things that you understand their logic train, even if you don't agree with where it's going. You can at
Right.
least see you can see how the cars line up.
Yeah, at the very least,
Yeah, A plus B doesn't equal Dorito in this equation.
for the most part, yeah.
So the Supreme Court in this landmark decision held a 6-2 vote in favor of Wong Kim Ark.
Okay, we like this.
Justice Horace Gray, writing for the majority, found that Wong was, in fact, a natural born citizen of the United States, as he was physically born on U.S. soil, regardless of his parents' origin. And this is where we get the interpretation of the 14th Amendment's birthright citizenship. And I was just like, this is so old. Now, I got to tell you, I'm not but halfway through my story
That's bananas.
because they go on to continue that Wong was born in the United States. His parents were not carrying on business or employed in a diplomatic or official capacity for the Emperor of China. So basically, you're not a diplomat, a diplomatic child or a diplomat's child born on US soil, subject
Okay,
to,
so if he were a diplomat's child born on U.S. soil, that would make sense for him to still be subject to the emperor.
yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. I'm just making sure I'm tracking
Yeah,
on the same
yeah.
same
So
line here. Okay.
if you and Ian become diplomats and you fly to Austria and give birth to baby number three, and that baby, if they followed this same type of logic, that baby would be American and not Austrian
Okay. Because we're diplomats.
because you're diplomats.
Right. And we probably live at the embassy, which is technically American soil.
But I mean, if you pop
So
them out on the
weird.
sidewalk, then I don't know.
There's some variables here that are unaccounted for.
That's, you know what, honestly. Um, but either way, that's kind of the logic train. Now, the court, as they're kind of going through this case, one of the things that came up is they basically said, how could citizenship be denied to the children of Chinese immigrants when it's extended to the children of Scottish, German, and others?
True. Diplomatic or not.
Yeah, so if we say Wong Kim Ark is not an American, then we have to take it away from all of these whiteys as well.
But we can't because they're Caucasian.
But at least at some point, somebody took their noodle noggin, pulled it from that moist, dark orifice, and realized that maybe we should apply some critical thought here.
I appreciate that. At least we're making some sort of headway in the right direction as far as thinking our thoughts all the way through before just gunning it.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, okay, so despite all of that, the passage that I just talked about with, basically, if we take it from the Chinese, we take it from the whites. So there's basically some snags in that citizenship because citizenship, while it's not racially restricted, it's specifically established that through Congress that Chinese immigrants could never themselves be U.S. citizens, and that law is not officially repealed until 1943.
I hate that so much.
So there's this weird fuzzy middle ground that is still like wonky for decades. So their children remain subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. They qualify for US citizenship at birth.
But because they're Chinese, they don't.
Yeah, like it is some weird middle ground, right?
And this is at least I'm gonna have to assume these sort of legislations were in some sort of state, at least from the point of the gold rush.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's a long time to be like, could we or could we not be US citizens? But
So
we've lived here and raised our families here.
they are US citizens, but I mean, I don't know. I'm going to fast forward, right? Okay, I just want to
Okay, sorry.
highlight ambiguity. Oh, no, you're fine. I'm just like issues for somebody else. Future politicians are going to have arguments over this. Um,
Yeah. Okay.
and thankfully, we're post all of that, so we have no issues. So this interpretation of the 14th Amendment stays active and is more than, or is the precedent for more than 125 years. But going back to Wong Kim Ark, 1901, he crosses from Juarez to El Paso, which is a very strange border crossing for me. I don't know why he went into Juarez. I don't know how, like, anyhow, he
Yeah,
comes
okay. That's
somehow or
the last
another.
place I thought you were gonna say, if I'm
Do you
being
see what I
honest.
mean?
Like,
Right. Like, one of these things is not like the other. But either way, Homeboy is leaving Mexico via El Pa or through El
maybe he
Paso.
was just vacationing in Mexico,
He
just taking a
honestly,
week.
these are things. He was a cook. He had to go try the tacos. Who among us?
Truthfully.
But he gets to El Paso, and he is the only person in the world that the Supreme Court ruling has said this man is a citizen by name. He's got the only distinction doing that.
Okay, I love that for him, but I hate it for everybody else.
El Paso immigration officials arrest him anyhow, and they begin deportation proceedings.
Feel like Homeboy went through the wrong
I don't
entry point.
feel like there's a right one.
Yeah, you're probably right. Now that you say that, you're probably right.
So, October 29th, 1901, Charles Meehan, a Chinese inspector, quote unquote, as a title in El Paso. I don't know how much demand there is for a Chinese inspector in El Paso.
I have follow-up questions, but I feel like maybe they're unanswerable follow-up questions.
They are. He's like,
Okay.
no, 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 no. The 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act is what you're violating there, home fry. So we're going to arrest you. I don't care what
And
your name is.
but he's like, I got papers
You
that
Supreme
kind of
Court.
famous.
So it's like the court, but it has sour cream.
Yeah. It's burrito.
Yeah, I'm glad you caught my joke there, as real bad as that was. So it takes 4 months for Wong to win a ruling again, claiming and supporting the fact that he is a U.S. citizen and cannot be deported.
I hate this for him.
This came almost 4 years after the U.S. Supreme Court decided the landmark case.
To that
So,
end, you know what? If the Supreme Court has said you are a citizen, no one else should be arguing with you about whether or not you are a citizen.
ta-da!
Like the logic is so flawed there.
You know what? From your lips to God's ears.
God, I'm so frustrated for him. Okay, sorry, I'm just getting all worked up over this.
Dude, my job is to get you all worked up.
Oh, you do it so well.
It
You
is
should get a
such a
promotion.
gift.
Take a
So,
breath. Take a breath.
now, Wong's landmark legal case is well known among legal scholars, but the run-in with the El Paso immigration authorities after the Supreme Court ruling was lost to history until we had this scholar named Amanda Frost who stumbled upon records in the National Archives and wrote about it in 2021.
It's been that long.
Yeah.
I always thought you were going to say, like, this scholar, Amanda Frost, discovered this. It was 1925.
No, I mean like basically last week in the grand scheme
Y
of history.
yeah, like 12 minutes ago. Just
Yeah.
like, okay.
So, meanwhile, January 20th, 2025, one of the first actions that President Trump took after being inaugurated was to issue an executive order purporting to deny birthright citizenship of children born to undocumented parents or whose parents are in the country under temporary status. Of course, and triumphantly, litigation ensued shortly after the administration issued this order, and the implementation has been blocked by courts as of 3 days after that fact.
Okay, so just so I clearly understand
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
the implementation of Trump's plans here were blocked by the court, right?
Correct. Yeah,
That's
they
okay,
were
okay.
like absolutely not.
We actually have a court case about this.
Yeah, we've talked about it before, and we've decided how about no? How about
We have like a
no?
precedent. There are rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the descendants of Wong Kim Ark remain steadfast to their dedication to uphold their family's legacy, which
I
I
love that.
absolutely love. Now, one of the one of the sources that I couldn't validate, I couldn't go through. There was a podcast where they had said that at like the 125 anniversary of this case coming into being, the reporter went and found either his son or his grandson. Records there are ambiguous. And they had said, "What do you think about your dad and granddad, their involvement?" And he was like, "I'm sorry, what?" There, my Supreme Court case with my direct ancestor, recent
Just because he
ancestor.
didn't say anything?
Yeah, he's like, we never talked about it. How would this be a thing?
Oh,
And so the most recent descendant who clearly benefits from this had no idea that this was such a big deal.
okay, okay. That actually, you know what? That checks. Like, the man's already been through enough. He probably just wants to live his years out. Like,
Yeah,
we don't need to keep rehashing the things that are difficult in our life. Like, let's just do the thing.
but either way, we have some of his descendants. We have the Wong siblings, Sandra and Norman. They're born in San Francisco and they still live in the Bay Area.
That's so cool.
There was an event held at the headquarters of the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association, which were raging. Nope, they'd raised funds for Wong Kim Ark's case. Now, Sandra lives in North Bay, Norman lives in the East Bay. Their father's either the son or grandson of Wong Kim Ark. They really don't know because there were discriminatory laws at the time that kind of made immigration paperwork for Chinese nationals unreliable.
Why am I shocked? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about how great of record keeping the Chinese and Japanese are, and we love this. We love that we have records that go back millennia,
Yeah, I was gonna say literally thousands of years.
and we honor and trust these and their validity. And meanwhile, like 100 plus years ago in the US, we're like, well, we were too racist to pay attention to if we were writing it down right.
We also don't know how he spelled it, and the typewriter ran out of whatever ink
Right.
or something like 3 words in.
Yeah,
So
we,
it's
we
kind
ran out
of
of fucks
vague.
3 words in, and so we couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, this feels normal. Okay.
Now, Sandra said she didn't learn her family's history until her father's funeral, that it just wasn't mentioned while she was growing up.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Okay.
And it was reporters and civil rights groups that eventually started asking questions to the family about the case. That's what caused them to kind of go, wait a minute, what? Can we read that article? Can we see those bits from the
Right.
National Archive? Now, Norman said his father was a China-born restaurant worker who served in the US Navy. And he's considering contacting officials in China or returning to the village in Guangdong, where Wong Kim Ark and his family had ties to find out more. And that same city, Guangdong, is the same area where all of the Chinese, or primarily the Chinese people that came through to build Portland, came from. They all came from this one small region.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. Okay.
In recent days, Norman's been speaking up against Trump to the media, but like more recently, like at this event, he was calling for unity against or in a divisive political climate. And I want to end it on something he said. We're all Americans. When we call ourselves American, we're agreeing to all be one.
Ooh, gives me the shivers.
And I can show you a image that I found where it is the some of the like some of the affidavit paperwork that he had coming into San Francisco.
Oh, wow. Okay. So she's showing me like the sepia toned, stained with time letterhead, typed letterhead,
Hmm.
and then printed on it is his photo, a photo of him. He is got the I don't know what the type of shirt is called. It's the high collar, pins in the back.
Yep.
Do you know what that's called?
I don't, so I'm gonna just move right along because I'd
Perfect.
rather keep
Okay.
my mouth shut than open it and be wrong.
Same. And then below it, so it's got a couple of paragraphs about him, and then below it is the seal of California, and then the city and county of San Francisco. And I'm assuming that's going to be his naturalization signature down there, maybe? I don't
Yeah,
know.
so basically this seems to say this guy is who we say he is, and we're a bunch of white people that recognize him as being born here and who lives
Right, right, right.
here.
Okay. And it's dated November 15, 1894.
Hmm.
Ugh. I hate that he had to do that. That he had to have his neighbors like attest to his existence here where he was born.
Same.
Yeah.
I like his chutzpah for being willing and able. I hate that he had
Honestly,
to.
yeah. It makes me wonder how many people had to do the same thing. Like after him, how many people had to fight to into the same degree that were able to use use his case as like a starting point.
Right. Right. But it was
Yeah.
neat that, like he had children born in China that were able to come to the US because he was declared a US citizen.
Yeah.
And so we have
Agreed.
his descendants living in the Bay Area now
Like not
because
far
of the
from
fight.
where. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, it's so cool to see the chain of events working the right way. Like, does that make sense?
it
Where
does.
you can
Yeah.
see the outcome of one person's actions
Hmm.
and how they play out for future generations.
And I love that now that they know the legacy of their grandfather or great grandfather, that now they're able to step in, lean in, and be
Mm-hmm.
like, no. And I think as we think about this divisive political climate, we have to think of the intersectionality of all of this. It can't just be like, oh, well, the Latinx are on their own. We're we're Asians, we're gonna band with the other Asians. Oh, you know what? You're not Chinese, so you're not one of us. We need to all be like, you know what? No. How about no? How about we're all in this together? We're all
We all
American.
bleed the same way.
Yeah. How
Yeah,
about
I
what's
agree.
right is right, regardless of background?
What? Yep. You're so right. Oh my gosh. Thanks for existing.
The alternative is unthinkable.
I mean, for me it is. I would be devastated if you didn't exist. And I'm pretty sure Hubs would melt, honestly.
I mean, he and I have like pissing matches on whose life would fall apart first without the other one.
Dang it. I think that's hilarious. I always tell Ian that he would not exist without me, and he doesn't argue. He just says, "Yeah, you're probably right." Okay, I now officially have my notes up if you're ready for my very different story.
I mean, I've got my embroidery in my lap, so carry
Okay,
on.
well, so my sources are Badass of the Week, the Sengoku Archives, and there's a couple of sources about Fushimi Castle. And I would just like to take this opportunity to say how very proud I am of myself for staying off of the American continent for the entire month of May. Like,
Why are you proud about that? That is like a weird flex.
I know it's a super weird flex, but like, I remember at the beginning of the month being like, I have a question about a story. Where's your story taking place? And you were like, my story takes place in the US. And I was like, okay, great. Then I'm going to pick that. Like, I know you're not going to do my story. And then you made some comment about like staying in my own lane, like, that I will be staying out of your lane. And so I was like, cool. Then I'm going to spend the entire month outside of the US so that I never once pass never once cross paths with one of her stories, so we're not worried. And I'm just really proud of myself for doing that. That's all.
Okay.
Okay? Like, I managed to keep out of your hair for a whole month and I'm proud of myself. So there. Um, so I'm gonna tell you about Torii Mototada and the Siege of Fushimi. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Oh, well then let me regale you with some interesting Japanese history. So I'm gonna start with Fushimi Castle. It's from the very beginning sort of shrouded in this cloud of failure. Um, I don't know if like the land that it was built on was hexed or somebody, I don't know, stepped on the wrong crack. I don't know, but from the very beginning, this area of Fushimi is just not ever designed to be successful as a home site. The original castle is founded and built between the years 1592 and 1594 by a man called the Great Unifier, Hideyoshi, who was a Japanese samurai in Daimyo? I never
Daimo.
pronounced that word. Daimyo. Okay. It's the one word I cannot say right, like the Thames River, which now I officially say wrong every time on purpose. Um, Incidentally, and I could not tell you this, Totatami, he basically rises from like a position as a peasant to being a member of the retinue of Oda Nobunaga.
My man, that
Hmm.
dirty barbarous man, Nobunaga.
I saw that and I was like, no freaking way. That's so cool. What a small world we all live in.
Now,
Um,
Angie's referencing the very fr episode one
I was gonna say I thought it was
where
like episode one.
yeah, where I talked about the black samurai Yasuke who found his way in Oda Nobunaga's court
Yes, yes, I am.
as a literal
So
black man from Africa, which holy hell. Anyhow, go on.
in 1500s Japan, right? So this Toyotomi, he builds this castle, and about a year later, it's destroyed in what sources say was quite a big earthquake.
They have him
Shortly
there.
after, yeah, they do, right? Shortly after, he sets out to rebuild it, and then he opts out of life a couple of years later. I tried to find out a little bit more information to find out exactly how he passed, but I was a little unclear. They just know that he died at Fushimi Castle within a couple of years. And they did try to keep it quiet for a minute. So I know there was definitely some stuff going on, but I don't know what the reason of his death was.
Okay.
So anyway, then enter a fellow by the name of Tokugawa Ieyasu, and he moves into the castle, which was destroyed in a battle. He then rebuilds the castle, only to then later dismantle the castle as per his he develops this one castle per country law. Like I don't fully understand this law and I wish that I did, but my understanding is very limited and it's to the effect of like you get one castle and that's that. I think that he is trying to go against this whole like system that I spoke about earlier in Tomoe Gozen's episode of
Hmm.
like you have the landed gentry, but they're all living in these lavish palaces in the capital, but they also have these other pieces of land and other homes elsewhere. I
These
think he's
country
trying to
estates.
limit that,
Okay.
but I'm not 100% sure exactly what the deal with that is. So anyway, like I said, he moves into the castle, he rebuilds it, and then later dismantles it. So at this point in the story, just for rough fun, I'd like to tell you that it was built, destroyed, rebuilt, then destroyed, then dismantled. So, like, this castle has not had a good life. But if you go, and I did not include any photos, I'm so sorry. I just now realized I could have. There are some, it was supposed to be like the outside is a fortress, the inside is a lavish estate, like golden paneled walls room lavish estate.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Um, like that's the idea of what it was supposed to be like. Enter Torii Mototada. He's born roughly around 1539, and as a young man, he becomes very close to Tokugawa. And if the name Tokugawa Ieyasu sounds like familiar to you at all, it's because he's the founder of the shogunate that would rule Japan for the next 2.5 centuries.
Yeah.
I figured it rang a bell, right? Like, I can't think of doing Oda Nobunaga and that not ringing a bell. That's just, I was like, she's gonna know exactly who all of these people are, probably by first name. Um, so anyway, these two, they grow up together and they're serving in combat from very young men. And Tokugawa sees how skilled Mototada is as he's watching him do things like taking 2,000 cavalrymen with him to smash through the line of 10,000 samurais. Like, this man is fearless and has no qualms getting the job done. He is also present and involved in a lot of important battles. One includes the siege of Idue Castle, and his actions here against the man called the Crimson Demon of War.
What a name.
Right? He is an episode all in of himself, in my opinion. But basically, like Motodada's his prowess during this particular battle sort of ensures his place as one of Tokugawa's like most trusted commanders and generals, right? Like he's the dude Tokugawa trusts through and through. And as a both a reward and as an acknowledgement that Tokugawa is giving Mototada that he recognizes his skill on the battlefield and his tactical leadership, he gives him command of Fushimi Castle. Now, what
And
we
it's
need
been
to know,
dismantled by this point.
it's not has not been dismantled yet. He dismantles it a little bit later.
Okay, so
You'll
it's
find
not
out why.
full regression IKEA furniture.
Correct. We are still working with a functional castle at this point, a functional fortress at this point. But what we need to know is that this is not a peaceful time in Japanese history, right? Like that's probably pretty obvious. And there are these two super powerful groups vying for like the supremacy over Japan. And there is this castle kind of sitting right there. And Fushimi Castle is the last place of the realm of men with which Hiroshi, the original builder of Fushimi castles, loyal men still live. So there's like this little group that are still loyal to the original owner, if you will, of Fushimi Castle. And then on the other side of that are all of Tokugawa's men and kind of the rest of Japan.
Okay.
So that's kind of what we're working with, right?
This
And
sounds like foreshadowing.
right? So you've got what's left of Hideyoshi's men and his his loyal few, and then you have all of Tokugawa and his men, and these two groups that are vying for power. And then you have Fushimi Castle, and Fushimi Castle is what's left. Like if Hideyoshi's men can take Fushimi Castle, Tokugawa's pretty much screwed. Like it's the last, like it's like the wall in Game of Thrones. If that makes any
That
sense. Like if
makes
we
a
can
ton of
break
sense.
this,
Yeah.
we're toast. Right? Okay. So that just tells us like how important Mototada is to Tokugawa in his leadership skills and all these other things, right? So this is what we're working with. We're working with this idea that Tokugawa knows this is the last stronghold, and he gives this command to Mototada like with full knowledge that once I leave here, there is a chance I will never see you again. Because what they know for sure is that at some point in the very near future, there will be an attack.
Oh,
And Motodada's like, I got you. Don't worry about it. You go do your thing in the East. It's my greatest pleasure to serve you. Okay? So that's kind of what happens. And in August of 1600, Motodada receives word that there is a party heading his way of at least 40,000 of Hideyoshi's loyals, and it's led by a man called Ishida Mitsunari, and they intend like, to lay waste to the castle. They are going to destroy it to rubble, and he knows this. Now,
okay.
mind you, how many men you think he's got at the castle with him?
Gosh, we're going up against 40,000 and
Yeah.
Homeboy said, "Gosh, I know this is going to be bad. I'm going to say 500."
Well, we're lucky. We have 2,000.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm
Yeah.
I'm glad we were prepared.
We're
2,000 still
so
feels woefully short.
woefully short. But Motodada's like, this is what I was built for.
Today
Me
is
and
a
my
good day to
men,
die.
pretty much, like, me and my men will do our job. And so he is like, absolutely, let us do the thing. Come on, let's go. I know I'm screwed. We just need to hold this fortress for a few more days. Doing so will give time for Tokugawa, who's fighting on the other side of the country, to turn around with the full force of his army and march home in time to save the capital.
Okay.
So, like, and Mototada knows this. So he's like, I have to hold out for as long as humanly possible. So he preps for battle. He preps for he digs in for the siege, all of that, right? So, in fact, I just have to say this like kind of broke my heart a little bit. When one source says that when at just prior to August, Tokugawa had come through and like stopped off to visit Mototada on his way to where he was going for this other battle. And one source says that they wept while they spoke, fully aware that they would never see each other again.
I love this version of masculinity.
Right? And for me, like reading that really kind of shows that side of humanity that we don't get to see in a lot of these moments, I think, in a lot of, especially in movies, when you look back on historical movies, you never see these tender moments between friends where it's like, I recognize your importance in my life. Love you, okay, bye. Um,
Well,
so I
you don't
really,
see it between men.
right, that's what I mean. So I wanted to put that in there. But anyway, back to the siege. Badass of the Week has this great quote about Motodada's resolve saying he would stand and hold out as long as possible, wreak as much nut-crunching devastation as his 2,000 sword-swinging samurai psychos could muster.
That is a quote.
I was like, yeah, you're gonna be included. I freaking love this quote. So, there's your visual if you're looking for it. So they prepare for the onslaught and it arrives, and for days there is just fierce fighting on both sides. You've got firing guns at each other, there's cannon fire, there's like fire, and then fire on top of fire, but this castle will not fall. At one point, The enemy, this is like one of the like what is little side stories that happens in the battle. At one point, the enemy fires an arrow into one of the Baileys, and attached to the arrow is a note for the commander of that area telling him they have his family, and if he does not help them, their execution is all but sure.
I have a feeling the commander's just like, I'll see him in the next world.
You would think, but no. He
Oh,
panics and immediately takes 40 of his men. So remember, we only have 200 to begin with, or at this point,
2000.
2,000. Yeah, excuse me, 2,000 to begin with. So he takes 40 of his men and they start to disassemble part of the wall and then light a fire. And between all the battling that's already happening and the fire and the disassembling of the wall, there's all sorts of chaos. Smoke is everywhere. A handful of the attackers make their way in. Now, shortly after this, peace terms are brought to the attention of Mototada, and he's like, yeah, no. It's no, thank you. Like, we're here. We're gonna duke it out. You walked all this way. I mean,
Yeah, I'd hate for you to feel you got the short
you
end of
got
the
cheated.
stick
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I gave up too early.
I prepared tea. I
Spent your
mean,
arrows.
that's why we're here, right? So he personally leads the counterattack. At this point, he has 200 men left,
Oh, they have lost so much.
and then he has 10. And
This is
these
like that game of Risk where you go up against so many and you're just getting whittled and whittled and whittled
like the
down.
one guy left,
And your
and
attacker's
you're
just like, roll again.
yes, and you know you're screwed, but you're gonna roll again anyway. Yeah. Um, so these final moments, they're shrouded in a little bit of mystery, or at the very least, some conflicting accounts. But at this point, it seems that Motodata realizes, like, this is it, boys, we're going out. So he takes his last 10 men to retreat into the castle, like into the inner sanctum of the castle to commit seppuku.
Mhm.
But there's a man there called Suzuki Shigetomo, and sources suggest that he was there and he challenged Motodata in a fight to the death. Now, one of two things that either happened. Either Motodata asks him to wait so that he can die with his men, and they all commit seppuku right there. Or they fight and Shigetomo kills him. Either way, Motodata's head was taken as a trophy and displayed on the Kobashi Bridge along with other relatives of Tokugawa. We know that they're stolen by cloth merchants and then given a proper burial. But the sacrifice was not in vain because a couple of things come out of it. First, they took with them 3,000 of the enemy army. So,
That's not bad. You
not
you
bad,
you took more than you lost.
right? Granted you didn't have a ton to start with.
Right.
Now, while so numbers are skewed, they believe the top end of the amount of men Motsada had was 2,000, but it could have been as low as 1,800. But either way, most of them are dead. There is no known number for how many actually survived the incident. But
And I have
what
a
this
feeling
does,
there's a high likelihood of them opting out after the battle.
I, yeah, right. But what this does, this 10 days of siege, is it gives Tokugawa the time he needs to turn around and come home with the full force of his army. That's all he needed. And Mototada knows that. So the other thing, and this is why I wanted to tell the story, because I just thought this was absolutely off the wall and kind of the coolest thing ever. Tokugawa disassembles the castle at this point, and the floorboards where the last remaining men died are used in the ceilings as in temples around Kyoto.
And they're stained with blood that you can see.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's where okay. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess I did know part of the story.
I figured you would. So there is a letter that was sent to Tadamasha. He was Motorada's son, just a few days before the fall of the castle. And in the letter, he tells the history of his family and their loyalty to Tokugawa. And the letter is phenomenal. you can actually still, like, there's English translations of it, and I'm trying to find it for you so that I can read it to you. There are little chunks. Would you like to hear some of it?
Go for it.
Recently, there has been the report of an uprising in the Kamigata area, and that a large number of rebel daimyo have fallen into the evil scheming of Ishida, who will first lay siege to this castle and are now making such preparations with large forces. For myself, I am resolved to make a stand within the castle and to die a quick death. It would not take much trouble to break through a part of their numbers and escape, no matter how many tens of thousands of horsemen approached from their attack, or by how many columns we were surrounded. But that is not the true meaning of being a warrior. It would be difficult to account as loyalty. Rather, I will stand off the forces of the entire country here, and without even 1/100th of the men necessary to do so, will throw up a defense and die a resplendent death. By doing so, I will show that to abandon a castle that should be defended, or to value one's life so much as to avoid danger, and show the enemy one's weakness, is not within the family tradition of my master Iseu. He goes on
Nice.
in this letter, and he tells his son to look after his brothers, and all of these just big, flowery, beautiful things. And then he goes on to say, like, basically giving him life advice on how he should be, what type of leader he should be, what type of man he should be, all with knowing, I will not see you again. I plan to die here. And this is the advice I choose to leave you with. And it's beautiful.
We have
But
this letter from the
yeah,
1500s,
yeah,
but we don't know Wong Kim Ark's grandson or great grandson. No clue.
yeah. Isn't that wild? The duality of humans are weird. It is absolutely bizarre. So that is my story about the bloodstained floors, or bloodstained ceilings of the temples in Kyoto.
And I love knowing the backstory and knowing that he was just so petty that he's like, no, we're going to see their sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
for
Yeah,
hundreds of years.
yeah, and that was pretty much when Tokugawa got there and he saw what happened. He was like, "And take it apart and send it everywhere. Show them what it is to be a warrior. Show them what it means to hold out till the very end." And I watched this video. I didn't include it in my notes because I couldn't remember what the video was called, but it was like a tour of the temples where the floorboards are.
Hmm.
And in some of the spaces, you can see bloody footprints and handprints. And one of them showed the outline of what they assume is one of the men's faces,
Ooh,
like smashed into the floor. And
yeah,
I was like, whoa, that's insane. Um, but I appreciated like the humanity of the whole story. Like, I'm a dad, I'm aware of what's going on, but I'm also a warrior, so I'll leave my sons with the best advice I can give them and what it means to be a warrior and to have a public office like this. Like, from the very beginning, his goal was just to serve and do it the right way. And so that's my guy.
I love it. I love all of it. This has been a delightful little romp through history. Well,
Bloody one at that.
if you've enjoyed it, where Angie went bloody and Theresa strangely stayed away from so much as a bloody nose, rate, review,
Yeah, are we
subscribe.
okay?
See how roles reverse tomorrow or next week or when the next time you tune in. And on that note, goodbye.
Bye.